Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shalansky in an episode of Worlds to Conquer, and I am going to have a powerful conversation with you today about leadership. And instead of talking to you like I do so many times about how to rally your team members at your registered investment advisory firm or within your broker dealer or whatever financial services space that you're empowered in, I talk to you a lot about how to steward that organization, about how to get your troops rallied behind you, about how we as a collective group can deliver so much value to clients that we create a world of abundance. But today, instead of talking to you about all of the positive aspects of leadership and all the ways that you can lead and steward your organization, I'm going to talk to you about the number one, Jamie's top list of worst leaders that you could possibly imagine. This type of leader is so detrimental to the organization, and you oftentimes do not see it coming. This is the type of leadership style that a lot of us out there end up wanting to possess, especially if we come from a background where we weren't treated well and we want to go on and become an entrepreneur or a business operator or some type of leader, and we want to avoid doing all of those mistakes that maybe we experience from bad management, bad supervision, or just having horrible bosses. And it ends up becoming the worst scenario possible for your employees. This is the worst type of leader in any organization, in any industry across the board. This is the type of leader that makes me the most nervous. Now, I'm not talking about the ones that are illegal or unethical or super shady or deceitful. Those of course are terribly bad people, but I'm not talking about those type of people. I'm talking about the type of leaders that we don't see this coming. We don't see the ineffectiveness of their leadership until it's often too late, until there is such an erosion of integrity and respect at the company that the entire culture has 180'd on itself, did a 180-degree turn, and it is detrimental to everyone employed there. The worst type of leader I see in any organization is the leader that has to be liked. It is the most scary person for me in that room when I am with a leader that has to be liked. That individual is the greatest threat to the organization. So a lot of the business clients that we work with at Shalansky & Associates are RIA up in Anchorage, Alaska. We do SWOT analysis, and a SWOT analysis is identifying a company's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And one of the areas when I have an entrepreneur, when I have a business client, when I have that leader of that organization that has to be liked, they no longer are inside of the strength category. In fact, they're my biggest threat, and it's an internal threat. And it is one that oftentimes when a leader has to be liked, does not understand the detriment and ripple effect that they're going to cause. Now, let's talk a little bit about this. What does it mean if you are a leader that has to be liked? And we need to unpack this together because this is a very passive-aggressive way that a leader that has to be liked sneaks into an organization. And today in our society, we talk a lot about work culture. And so a lot of what I'm going to tell you is counterintuitive to what we talk about with a good work culture. At Shalansky & Associates, our culture is fantastic. We are very driven. We're very motivated. We deliver massive value. All of our employees have incredible integrity across the board, and we get excited about the work that we are doing, and we welcome the challenge within that organization. But it is not because I have to be liked by all my team members. I'm not looking for them to invite me to their birthday parties. I am looking to inspire them to become their greatest, best selves. I want them to unpack and discover the truths that make them who they are so that they can have greater and greater impact on their coworkers, on the clients that we serve, and the community that we have. But if I was focused on being being liked all of the time by those individuals, we wouldn't be able to have the tough conversations that we have to have as stewards of an organization. So what does it look like when a leader has to be liked? Because this isn't the type of leader in your mind you may be envisioning. So when I first heard about this concept, that the most dangerous leader is the one that has to be liked, I thought this is the guy that was walking around smiling, shaking everyone's hands, blah, blah, blah. But it's more passive than that. It's a lot more passive. Instead, this is the person that says, hey, I want everyone to have fun at work. I want you guys to enjoy what you're doing. I want you to be happy. And so when we put those emotions of our employees first, then oftentimes we're centered around that. I want to make them happy. And so this puts you in a terrible position as a leader, because what it does is it lacks team accountability. And the very first detriment that you're going to find in your organization, if you're a leader that has to be liked, is that oftentimes if you give team members deadlines, they blow them. And there's no recourse or accountability or disciplinary action. Instead, they brush off that deadline, but they tell you, hey, boss, I'm really sorry. My kid was out sick this week, or I had this happen, or I got slammed with all these client phone calls, or I didn't realize it was supposed to be done in time. I mean, there are a plethora of excuses as to why something happened that made us miss a deadline. But time is the greatest equalizer in the entire world. We all have the same amount of time. We don't have all the same amount of education. We don't all have the same amount of wealth or background or experiences, but we do get the same amount of time. So when your employees are not taking deadlines seriously and you are a leader that has to be liked, how then are you going to hold them accountable when they miss that deadline? What is that conversation going to look like? How many of their excuses do you accept or just take on? And when you're having those tough conversations and they're telling you, hey, I couldn't do that because I'm only one person, or there's so many hours in the day, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and you're not looking for ways to say, great, how do I support you in getting this done? Instead, you're saying, you know what, why don't I just get it done? If you delegate something, if you've asked an employee to do something, you cannot pick it back up, because it is so insulting to them and their ability to perform. And initially, you don't see it as an insult. You see it as an act of stewardship and leadership, that you're saying, you're too busy, you've got a lot on your plate, so I'm going to take this back over. But what you really said to that employee was, I gave you something because I thought you had the skill set and capacity to do it, and you don't for whatever reason. Therefore, I don't trust it's going to get done, so I'm going to take it back over. That's what you're saying. You are not helping your employees by taking work back from them, because they aren't given the ability to level up. They aren't looking at ways that they could become a better professional. Instead, all you're telling them, I don't trust you to get this work done, and therefore I'm the only one that can do it. And that might be the case. There might be work that only you can do. But if there's work that only you can do because it regards financial planning advice, then you should have been doing it in the first place, and you shouldn't have delegated it out to a team member. But if it is work that a team member can and should be doing, and you take it back from them, then they have no accountability, they have no opportunity to improve their skill set, and they have zero accountability with you in the future. Because if something gets too hard, if something gets too tough, you're the easy button. You just said, just shove it back on me and I'll get it done instead. And that is such a disservice to your team members that you have hired and want to empower to become the best professionals that they can absolutely be. But if you're a leader that absolutely has to be liked by your team members, nobody's going to be accountable to you. And then when hits the fan, because it will, at some point in all of our careers, something is going to go wrong, and we're really going to need people to step up. But when that happens, if you're the leader that has to be liked and you kept giving them work and taking it back because they had too much of a workload and you didn't want to put too much on their plate, what happens when it gets real? What happens when you have to meet deadlines? What if this is an audit and the SEC or FINRA comes in and says, hey, I need all of these documents by this date, and your employee says, oh yeah, I was working on it, but I got really busy and whatever reason, blah, 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 blah. Have fun repeating that one to a regulator. Have fun repeating that to an auditor or a compliance professional. They're not going to see that as a reason that the work didn't get done. And so you really need to look at that and say, how accountable are your team to making sure that they're delivering when they said they were going to deliver? Now, I help my employees set expectations and deadlines. I'm deadline driven, and I'm deadline driven because I truly believe in Parkinson's law, that the work will take up the time that you allow for it. So when I'm working with my team, I want to make sure that I'm giving them deadlines, but those deadlines have to be respectful deadlines. So oftentimes, one of the pieces of feedback that I got from my team years ago, they said, listen, the time that you think it takes for this task to be done is the time it would take for you to do this task. It's not the time that it takes for me to do that task. And so I look at that and I say, wow, and I'll show you a real life example. In our office, we are religious about dictation. Every single encounter with a client gets put into our CRM called Infinity. It is our brain trust of information. And this is true for our entire organization. If a client stops by to drop off a statement, if a client uploads something, if a client calls, if you saw a client at Costco, you are putting all of that information into the CRM. Our CRM is where everyone knows what is happening with that particular heartbeat. That's how we refer to households, their heartbeats, and we don't want to ever get away from that. And so after a financial advisor with our organization has a meeting with a client or prospect, we're doing dictation, and we follow the medical format of SOAP, subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. And we follow that format for every single person that we meet with. Our RIA in Anchorage, Alaska was started by our parents, Floyd and Rosa Shalansky, and they started it in around 1981. And this became just intuitive. This became the format that we all used. Everyone got, at that time, a letter and then a memo to record for their file. And we call it the CYA, Cover Your Assets. And this was your responsibility to complete on the client so the rest of the firm knew what was happening. And then also, if you ever had an audit and said, did you discuss this with a client? Yes, I did. Mr. and Mrs. Auditor, here's where I discussed it. And it was on this date, this time, this is what I said, and this is the client's feedback. And so we're really, really religious about getting dictation done. And because our firm started in the 1980s, by the 1990s, I was working at our family firm. And what was one of the first few jobs that I had. We started as janitor, then I went to cold caller, and I got to earn my way up to doing dictation. And at that time, it was literally on a tape recorder, and you had to listen to it and you had to type it all out. And so I've got 10, 15 years under my belt of doing dictation. I am masterful at doing dictation. It takes me about 10 minutes to do a piece of dictation. But because I've got over 10,000 hours of putting in doing dictation. And so I look at it in our team, and we meet with around 500 heartbeats every single surge. We surge in the spring, and we surge in the fall, and then we have mini surges spread out between the summer, because in the summertime, your clients might also like doing other things besides meeting with their financial advisor, just like they do up here in Alaska. So we do those pieces of dictation. And when I was talking to my assistant, she said, listen, it's taking me like 45 minutes to do a piece of dictation. Okay, whoa, that blew my mind, because it takes me 10, but I've got a mastery of it, right? So what I do instead is I give her a deadline and I say, hey, you know what? This should take you no more than 30 minutes every single piece of dictation. So if it's taking you longer than 30 minutes, are you guilty of playing office? Are you not getting in there and getting things done? Especially today, because as much as the artificial intelligence world is in our space, there's no reason memos to records should take so long. We can record them, somebody else transcribes them, somebody else edits them, and we are looking for action items and accuracy in that dictation to get in there. But I had to ask the question. I had to be the type of leader that says, hey, listen, it takes me 10 minutes, so is it realistic that it could take you 20? And they said, you know what, 20 might be tight. I'd feel more comfortable if you tell me it took 30 minutes. I say, okay, great. It's going to take you 30 minutes to do dictation. And they say, yeah, that's about right. So the day following my appointments, let's just say I had 8 appointments in a calendar day, and it's taking you 30 minutes per appointment. That means 4 hours out of your day is going to be spent doing dictation. And they said, yeah, I guess that math works. And I said, wonderful. Then let's time block it where phones are off, tabs are closed, right? You don't have your email, you don't have your chat, you don't have everything else open. You only have the CRM for accuracy checking, and you only have the dictation app up, and you're getting all of the dictation done in 4 hours. So So for every full day of appointments, it should take you no more than 4 hours to get all the dictation done. And we set that ahead of time. I give them those deadlines ahead of time, but they're not deadlines that I said, okay, it should take, if you did the work at my level, my speed, it should be this amount of time. Instead, I want to hear their feedback, but I also have to hold them accountable. So if we start getting into the 3rd or 4th week of surge and dictation is 5 days behind, that is completely unacceptable in my mind. And so now I've got to stop and have a Saturday morning and pull those people in and hold them accountable and say, hey, listen, we went through this whole process and this is where you should be at on this day at this time. And if they are behind, if they have missed those deadlines, if they are circumventing the process by taking too long because they're so concerned about making sure everything is grammatically correct inside the memo, and that they end up playing office and they are dramatically behind schedule, because remember, our dictation, everyone else in the office is also relying on that for client deliverables, for operation tasks, for things that financial advisors need to get back in. If our relationship managers are getting an action that we need to meet with a client a second time in a surge, because sometimes, though not often, that does happen. So everyone is dependent on that piece of dictation coming back in a timely manner in order for them to get their jobs behind. Because if dictation is 5 days behind, now operations is 7 days behind. And so we have this catastrophic event occur by all of us not following along to that schedule. So if I have that Saturday meeting and I say, hey, listen, why are we behind? Where are we at? What needs to happen here? The liked leader will say, Jamie, you have a skill set. You're able to do dictation in 10 minutes. Why don't you jump in over the weekend and clear out their workload? Is that my highest and best use? Is doing dictation now my highest and best use? I'm 100% capable of it, and I'm certainly not above it, but it's not my highest and best use because my team members can do dictation on a weekend. What they cannot do is prep for a client appointment. They cannot do that part of it. So instead, I ask them the question, how are we going to get caught up by Monday? Because the rest of the team is waiting on this information. And then I shut my mouth and I let them talk and I let them problem solve, because we employ the most incredibly hardworking, professionally dedicated people in the country. I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe that. Everyone shows up and they show up. They give it 110% and they care about the work we're doing, and they know that it impacts the heartbeats. There's a reason why we're all doing this, and that when it comes to people's life savings, and that's what we're doing as financial advisors, we are managing somebody's life savings that they have turned over to us and said, hey, I don't want to outlive my money. Help me make smart decisions with my money. And we get to do that as a profession. And so when I ask my team member, what are we going to do? Because the rest of the team is counting on you to get this done, and I'm quiet. I let them problem solve. And does that mean that sometimes they could be working a weekend during surge? Yeah, sure does. Our schedule provides a lot of flexibility for employees outside of surge, but inside of surge, that's a game. That means everyone is there. That means that if you're pulling a weekend because you need to get the work done, I don't care. That's what's required. That is what is being asked of you. And if you are the type of person that just says, no, I'm off the clock, I'm done, it's Saturday, it's Sunday, I don't care about doing this work, then you're probably not a good culture fit for us. Because if you're the type of person that looks at the work, knows how important it is to other coworkers on your team, and you don't care, you're not a good fit for us. A liked leader would run into the risk of saying, hey, all of this isn't done. What are you going to do? No, I don't want you guys to have to work the weekend. I'll jump in. I'll take care of it. I'll do as much as I can. And then you are not respecting them as professionals. You're saying to them, I don't trust you to get this done. Therefore, I'm going to do it. And they will never ever be accountable to you. They will never care about a deadline. They will never care about the importance of a task that you have given them because you told them it was okay not to care. The second fault of a leader that has to be liked is that you create a culture of indecisive, inconsistent decision making. Instead of being able to have a process in which problems are solved by certain members, escalated to management, and then brought to you for final say in, you're instead trying to run your organization like a committee. And you can't rule by committee. You can't effectively make decisions by committee because sometimes it takes too long to get things happening. And at the end of the day, it's your organization. It's you on the line. You are the steward. You are the leader. And you want to put people in power to make decisions and problem solve. But at the end, the very last part of it has to come up to you. And you have to say, yes, I support this. No, I don't. Here's what you guys didn't think about, etc. You can't sit there in a vortex of indecision. Now, does this mean that we have some type of dictatorship at Schlansky & Associates? Hell no. We want people to be involved in the work that they are doing. I respect and value their opinions, but I don't allow my team to spin and pretend to be busy and play office and not make decisions. In fact, we often talk about this. I wish I had 3 different sand timers, the type of capsules that you tip over and the sand goes, because in 15 minutes, you can do a lot of things. You can do a lot of powerful things with a 15-minute meeting. In a 30-minute meeting, oh my gosh, you can impact a whole marketing plan for the rest of the year. In an hour-long meeting, oh, whoa, that is life-changing. If you have an hour with another professional whose opinion you value and you are working towards a common goal, an hour is an incredible time period in which you can make life-changing decisions, but not if everyone is playing office, not if everyone is trying to get a general consensus, not if you're trying to not rock the boat and make sure everyone is leaving that room liking you and thinking that you're just a really swell leader. It doesn't work that way. In fact, I like to set rules of engagement. So when we bring teams together, I say, hey, listen, the final decision on this is going to be mine, and it might not be one everyone gets on board with, but I want to hear everything out right now. Let's go ahead. No idea doesn't make it on the board. Let's just throw a bunch of ideas, and at the end of the day, let's walk through which one sticks. And then we collectively make the decision that way. But by the end of the meeting, I'm the one saying what's going to happen. I'm the one telling you what will go down, what work we will be doing. And I get my team on board and I get them collaborating, but I'm not so weak that I cannot make a decision. And I leave them treading water and confused about what is supposed to be happening. That's not leadership. Leadership is being able to make a decision. Leadership is being able to empower people to give you all the information so you can make the best decision. And that ties right into the third mistake that liked leaders make, and that is a lack of direction, a lack of clarity. If you're running around caring about everyone's feelings and talking to them to make sure they're happy and making sure that this is still the job that they want, then you're not showing them the direction that makes it their career. And I like to go to my team members and say, hey, listen, we're going to do big stuff. We're going to do hard stuff. I'm going to ask a hell of a lot of you. And some days you're not going to want to give it. On those days, you're going to have to recuperate because I need you to be a warrior. I need you to step up on the days that I'm asking you to do everything possible to be extraordinary. But I would never, ever, ever ask you to do something you're going to fail at. I won't ask that of you. And this is really important for different team members to understand because, for example, some of my leads, they're really not comfortable in a disciplinary review. And so that gets to be one of the times that they hold up their Jamie card and they say, hey, listen, I know that this should go under my role. I'm super uncomfortable. Can you help me out here? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Let me jump in. That's not me trying to be liked. That's me recognizing that they every now and then get to hold up a card and say, this is really a value rub for me. I'm super uncomfortable. I don't know how to handle it. And I need to tag you in. But when they tag me in, I don't just take it over. They're sitting in that room with me. So for having a disciplinary review, we're going over something, they're right there in that room with me and they're seeing how to negotiate and how to handle that situation. And that will make them better because we leave that room and I have that meeting with that one-on-one after the meeting wraps up with the employee. And I say, how did it go? And they said, wow, that was a lot better than I thought. And I said, yeah, because we have really great team members and everyone wants to do their best, but sometimes we're going to fail, but we got to be called out on it. We've got to be called out and we got to be told when we're not hitting the mark so that we know how to hit the mark the next time. And you You can't be afraid to avoid conflict. And that is one of the things that I see with liked leaders all the time. They want to make everyone happy. They want to keep everyone calm. And they think it's necessary to check in all the time to make sure everyone's good, quote unquote. And then they're avoiding conflict by doing that. And conflict is healthy. Conflict is good. It's passion. It's energy. If it's done respectfully, respectful pushback, respectful communication, setting those rules of engagements with team members. I literally write out in our employee handbook, what are the rules of engagement? We encourage healthy, constructive conflict at our firm, but not in a disrespectful way, not in a degrading way. Here's how to deliver it. Here's when you should deliver it. And here's what you should have done to ask questions before you go criticize or create some type of conflict with someone. And then that way you come informed so that you're not afraid of looking like a fool, opening up your mouth and confirming it in front of the whole group that you are. In this quest for this perfect work-life balance that everyone keeps talking about, we have completely abandoned the idea of healthy conflict. And that's so sad. That's where innovation happens. That is where strategy and synergy come alive and passion takes over, and we are able to problem solve as a group working towards a common goal. But not if everyone is acquiescing and nodding their heads up and down. That's a show of apathy. And if you're apathetic, you don't care. You don't care about the outcome. And if you don't care about the outcome, you sure as hell don't care about those heartbeats that outcome can affect. And the fifth fatal flaw of a leader that has to be liked, and this is the most detrimental of all, and this is what unstitches large organizations. This is what makes millionaires end up going bankrupt in their organization because nobody wants to work for them later. This is somebody that puts themselves in a constant state of recruiting because they have committed the most egregious sin of being a liked leader. And that is eroding respect. When you are a leader that has to be liked, you will circumvent your processes. You will put people in control and strip them of power behind their back. And you will do it for the sake of making other people happy and not even realize you're doing it. And I see this a lot with my business owners once they become applicable large employers. Because the people that I like to work with the most, they're bootstrap people. No silver spoons over here. They have pulled themselves up from verge of bankruptcy, not knowing if their credit card's going to work at the gas pump, not sure if they could afford all the groceries, and never once knowing what a vacation felt like because it just isn't how they were raised. And so they pull themselves up, and they do it by being this type of leader that inspires people, and people want to go work for you. And so we're getting that confused with having to be liked. And so people take these jobs, and your organization builds, and you get this robust respect, and the community starts buying from you, and you develop all these services, and you're changing this industry, and it's amazing. It's amazing and beautiful what you're doing. But along the way, you put into power, into position, and normally in the form of some type of C-suite or management or supervisors, a group of individuals to make decisions because your organization got so big you had to, right? And so maybe this is hiring an HR person. Maybe this is hiring a chief operations officer. Maybe this is hiring a CIO, a CTO, whatever it is, whatever your C-suite, your upper management level is, but you're still a leader that has to be liked. So you put these people in position, and you write policies, and they give you input, and you say, great, go make those effective. I want everyone to conform to the same policies, because once you're an applicable large employer, you have to. You got to have these employee handbooks, and people have to conform, and the policies have to be appropriate for everyone and fair. Because if they're not, that's how you get into lawsuits. That's how it starts to become super complicated, and you get yourself in trouble with previous employees. But then, because you're the leader that has to be liked, when those people go exercise the policies and procedures that you have put in place and that you know are in place, you go around and tell employees it's okay if they don't listen to them. And this can be in the slightest, smallest way. This can be an employee not conforming to a dress code. Maybe they've got facial piercings that aren't allowed. Maybe it's hair color. Maybe it's longer nails than are applicable. Who knows what your dress code is? And then you go to the one employee and you say, no, I think your pink hair looks great. Don't worry about changing it. They're just being kind of fussy. I'll talk to them. And then you go to your C-suite person and you say, hey, I think their hair's fine. Let's not enforce that policy. What you have just done is erode respect. And now that employee knows that the person you put in charge is the obstacle. The person you put in charge has no authority. The person you put in charge will no longer be respected by your team. And this is a fatal flaw a lot of leaders make for the sake of trying to keep the organization running harmoniously. And they say, Jamie, you just don't understand. We were going to lose them if this didn't happen. If you are going to lose them because of a policy that they didn't want to adhere to, a policy they knew about when they accepted the job, you are going to lose them anyway. It's not that policy that's preventing them from staying, but it's that policy and you going around the person that's enforcing that policy that could erode the respect and destroy the culture you spent so much time building. Because you can't create rules that are applicable for some and not applicable for all. And a liked leader will make too many exceptions. At Shalansky & Associates, we have a hard rule, really hard, really difficult, and that is no time off during surge. That's it. No time off during surge. I shared with you our surges are mid-March to mid-April, and then we have a big surge mid-October to mid-November. In the months in between, we have mini surges, and it's okay for somebody to be out during a mini surge in those particular departments. And I leave that at a supervisor level. So if I have 3 people in the operations department, one of them wants to take time off, that's fine. If I have 3 people in the relationship management department and 2 of them want to take time off during that period, that's not fine. So we really negotiate that. I'm a big stickler about every year making sure people are putting in for their time off and getting it on the calendar. I'm very, very driven that my team members give me their absolute best every day that they show up, but because I'm also committed to the recovery time, and I need to make sure that they're getting that recovery time outside of the office so that when I ask them to be a warrior and show up during game day, that they are ready. They're recharged, refueled, and ready for that mission. But if I'm the type of leader that says to me, somebody comes up and says, hey, listen, I've got this unique opportunity. It's going to be during surge, but it's my best friend's wedding and etc. blah, blah, blah. And I say yes. I say yes to that one person because that human side of me that doesn't want to have to tell people no. You don't want to have to disappoint people. You don't want them to be upset with you. And I cave to that. What if I told the rest of my team members? What have I told them? I've told the rest of my team members that this one person is more important than any of you. This one person on our organization is more important than any of the other work that you have done. And that's really, really disrespectful to an organization. So before you create the policies, and policies get to be revisited. If I've got somebody, especially in an organization that's like, hey, I really don't like this policy. I think we should have Flex Fridays. Fridays were slowed down during summertime. Everyone's out playing. I'd like to propose that we have a Flex Friday. Cool. Awesome. Put in your suggestion, problem solve it out for me, give it to me on a piece of paper. And during our next leadership meeting, we'll address it and we'll discuss it. And if we want to adapt the policy, awesome. We can make those changes. We can be flexible as long as that policy gets to apply to everybody across the board. We are not picking and choosing who gets to follow policies. Everyone is treated fairly and everyone is treated with the respect and dignity that they deserve. And if we've put somebody in a leadership position, and an employee team member comes around that leader and to a supervisor above them and wants a change made, we don't go undo that work. Instead, I've got a really great saying. I say, hey, did you get so-and-so involved or should I bring them in now? And that reminds the team member that, hey, there's somebody above you that you should have checked with first before coming to me. And I'm not going to undo anything that they did because I trusted to put them in a position to make decisions. And if those decisions can't be made, to know how to escalate it to me. But if I say wink, wink, nudge, nudge, don't worry, employee, team member, I will go talk to your supervisor. I will make sure that this is okay for you. Then what is that employee team member now going to think of their supervisor? They're not going to respect them. Why would they? You did that. You created and eroded a culture that disrespects the people you put in charge. And that is 100% your fault. A leader that has to be liked will corrupt and ultimately destroy the best of organizations. All right, TPR Nation, you know that everything we do at The Perfect RA is 100% about action items. We want to give you actionable advice you can take right now to go implement in your practice to be the perfect RIA that you want to be. So action item number 1. Are you holding your team members accountable? I want you to look back and say, when did somebody miss a deadline or when did they miss a deliverable? And how much of that was my fault, my responsibility for taking that back on? How much of that do I need to be accountable for? And then create a policy around deadlines that they can't be missed. And especially if you have salary positions, if there are missed deadlines, then guess what? Have fun working Saturday, Sunday. I don't want that for you, but you're putting yourself in the position of having to do that because you're not getting it done in time. And then I want you to look at what are the areas that cause conflict in your organization. Write them down. Figure out if you can do a team retreat or an activity or a lunch or just a half a day activity around that conflict. If so much conflict exists in your organization that you're not sure how to spearhead that, then sometimes get a stranger in a uniform. We do this a lot of times. We'll bring in a coach or an outside person to help work through certain conflicts. And this isn't, I don't like how Susie wears too much perfume. This is, hey, Susie's not taking this seriously, or Susie's not able to adapt because we always used to do it that way and we've since made a change. And you bring in a stranger in uniform that is able to take a dispassionate point of view and help the organization grow. The third action item I want you to do, and I know it's one of those ones that seem just like such nonsense, and it is until you get yourself in an employment legal situation. Look at your policies. Dust off that employee handbook. If you don't have an employee handbook, jump on Upwork. You could probably get somebody that was a retired HR person to write you one, and for $100. I mean, it's not very expensive. And go through all of those policies. Do you have your employee handbook in place? Do you have your standard operating procedures in place? And get your employees to sign off and agree on all of those. And then do the really hard thing, and that's follow them. Whatever's in that handbook, that's what should be followed. And that's what everyone has to listen to, because we all came together and we made a decision and said, this is the job that we're accepting. These are the rules we're accepting that job for. And now we're going to all be held to the same standard. Don't be the type of leader that has to be liked. Don't be the type of leader that doesn't have employees be accountable because you're doing so many one-off scenarios that you've eroded all of the respect everyone has for one another in your organization. Okay, TPR Nation, this has been an episode of Worlds to Conquer. I'm Jamie Shalansky. Go find people who share your values and change the world.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect